All right. So hi, we're here again for the Healer Village event Spring into Health. Talks and tips, group panel discussions, mini healing on enhancing vitality. Been really enjoying all the vitality talks, and we've got the lovely Sarah Yeoman here today, and we're talking about stress and its impact on vitality of mind and body. So Sarah is a nutritionist, myotherapist, holistic counsellor, probably a whole bunch of other things as well on top of that. So stress. So let's start with, vitality of mind and body. Let's give a bit of context of what that looks like, and then we'll move into more like how stress depletes that and impacts on that.
All right. So vitality of mind and body, I think first and foremost, we've got to consider the mind-body connection. So the mind plays a huge role in sending messages to the rest of our body and how that then responds. So vitality of both of those energetic components, head and body, I would say is clearly, we've mentioned it before, things like energy, feeling like you've got enough energy to do things, feeling like you've got clear thought is also one where you're not getting overwhelmed by thoughts and things like that, that you've got focus, you've got clarity, you've got the ability to probably do what you say you want to do from that aspect. And then from a body perspective, it's, again, an energetic component kind of comes into it, feeling like, so I would say from a musculoskeletal point of view, that you've got the freedom to move. It's like you're not limited in range of movement, that you're not feeling overly tight or restricted or anything like that. So movement is easy, would be one way of explaining a vital body. Another aspect in terms of digestion would be that you're not getting overly upset. Digestive processes would be a sign of vitality through that system. And then another one probably a mind-body one as well is sleep. So sleep is easy, you're not getting woken up, it's restful, you're waking up restful, and therefore that then flows into your day, feeling like you've got the energy to do it. And so, as we said, it's a holistic viewpoint when we look at a mind-body connection, that if you exclude the mind from the story, you only get half the picture. And if you exclude the body from the picture, again, you're only getting half of that component. So, but an acknowledgement that there is messages bidirectionally. So from the head to the body, body to the head.
And it's like basically ease and flow in all aspects. Yeah. Basically, we talk digestion and movement and sleep. You don't have brain fog, you've got clear mind, and then you can do all the things that you want to do, which is basically how you have fun and enjoy life. So and then so stress, like what does where does stress come in with all of this then?
Stress is an interesting one that I come up against time and time again, that we've normalized it so much. People sometimes don't even realize that they're under stress. So they think poor digestion is normal. They think the tight body is normal. They think the poor sleep is normal. That's just me kind of conversations.
And as you age, it's normal to have that. I see that all the time, and I go, but we're in our 40s, like.
And you shouldn't feel sluggish, and you shouldn't feel overly tired first thing in the morning, and all of those kind of things. So stress, primarily from that standpoint, if we want to look at that cortisol cycle, is that it should be
all right, so my internet did something funny. Sorry. Start again, Sarah. Sorry. Cortisol cycle.
All right, so the cortisol cycle is, we want it to be dulling down when we go to sleep, so that helps us go to sleep, and we want it ramping up when we wake up in the morning. A lot of people switch so that when they're if they choose to ignore that initial phase of sleepiness at night and they get their second wind, that throws out their cortisol cycle. So that's why they can be wired at 3 a.m. in the morning, or even all of that kind of stuff. So ideally we should be going to bed before 10 p.m. A lot of people don't do that. So mindful
That's
of the
very
fact
interesting, because I was talking about that in my talk about the waves of tiredness, and if you miss the wave, you have to wait a few hours. So I didn't know that there was a whole cortisol thing. That's really interesting. Continue.
Yeah. And then, as I said, the other wave to wake you up should be coming up between 5 and 7, which boosts our digestion and gets you ready for breakfast and all of those. So for some people who do this fasting and miss breakfast, that's why they can feel a bit funny until they actually eat and all of those kind of things. The cortisol is our primary stress hormone. So again, if you're throwing all of that out, so let's say you're waking up tired, and that throws out what you desire from a food perspective. So you typically want the sugary, fatty foods to give you enough energy to get through the day, which then, as we said, has its own cycle. So then you feel pretty tolerable because you're actually depleted in nutrients and not getting the energy. You're getting false energy, we'll call it, from sugar and fats and things like that.
It's not true vitality.
Vital energy.
Yeah,
it's not vital energy from fruits and vegetables and all of those kind of things. So that is one way, clearly, stress comes into play. And as we were discussing before, vitality looks like easy, clear cognitive thoughts and all of that kind of stuff. So stressful mind is one that the frontal lobe, prefrontal cortex and all of that shuts down when we're under stress. So it makes decision making harder. As I said, you get that brain fog kind of thing. And that's actually a stress response. So, and I'm sure we've all heard, we may not have, so I'll bring it in a little bit, parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. So parasympathetic is our rest and digest. So everything functions well when we're doing that. So our reproductive function well, our digestive functions well, mind functions well, all of that kind of stuff. When we're in that fight and flight, so sympathetic nervous system, digestion gets shut down because the body doesn't have this dividing energy to our hands and legs to run and do all those kind of things. And digestion reproductive gets shut down, all of that kind of stuff. So hence why we should be taking note of all of those in terms of determining our vitality. Like if we're only thinking of one aspect of our system and excluding it to the rest, then, I look at it as a holistic viewpoint. So if something's not working right, in likelihood, other things won't be working right as well.
That's a good point, because, you get really hyper-focused on your symptoms, and then you get hyper-focused on that system, forgetting that they're all interconnected and that there's other things that were probably giving you clues earlier, and
absolutely.
And definitely we get into the fight and flight even more because we're like, we got to fix the symptom. And
then we don't get the results we're looking for. Again, if we only look at one aspect to the exclusion of others, sometimes we won't have complete resolution. So like if we don't bring gut health into, let's say, reproductive health, then the potentiality is that you're not going to see an overall resolution, because you won't get estrogen being exported out of the body if you don't have enough fiber to bind to it, that kind of stuff. So hence, as I said, we think it's only a reproductive issue if we've got, irregular cycles, but in all likelihood, there'll be other things going on. I mean, you've only got to look at things like the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis, and then you've got a gut brain axis, and then you've got an ovary, adrenal, thyroid axis, and all of that kind of stuff, to acknowledge that we're interlinked is basically the simplest way to look at that.
Basically, like stress impacts on the hormonal systems, the different types. You've got the sex hormones and the adrenal, which most people focus on, but there's other ones, your thyroid, which is all your metabolism. It's all happening in the brain, where the pituitary and the, it's all connected. It's a great point that you're making. And then, what you were saying, right, with like, they hyper focus on the reproductive or the digestion. but then they forget the mind connection, and that the stress was actually part of the biggest cause that was creating all that. And and we get used, you were talking about how we get used to stress.
Absolutely.
Like what, I don't know what I want to ask about that, but I want to explore that a little bit more. Like, how would that look? Like what kind of things would people just get used to and it would look like in their life, which actually is a stressor for them?
Well, I mean, obviously from my myotherapy side of things, a lot of that is muscle tension. People just think that headaches are normal. They think I have daily headaches. That's just normal. Taking a Panadol a day is just normal. That's just my normal, all of that kind of stuff. And I think the other aspect is, to some degree, we tune out our bodies. We tune out wanting to be bothered by them, so to speak. I've had people sitting in the chair across from me who are exercising 7 times a week, crazy, and saying, "Oh, my body's not tight or anything," and you get them on the table and they're just hard as a rock, and it's just like, how did you become so, detuned to your body? How did you actually learn to tune that out? And I think the thing that brings me to is tolerance. So our body starts out as a minor intolerance, we'll say, and we go, not bad enough to do anything with. And so the body gets used to that as being their new level of normal. Then the body starts amping up the next symptom level of, dysfunction, stress inside the body. And so then we get used to that. And then that just keeps winding up till people, as I said, can sit in my chair and go, I get headaches daily, and think that's normal. Clearly not.
Yeah, and
scenario.
I like how you pointed that out. You haven't actually watched my talk, but your talk is like a beautiful flow on and addition to what I was saying, because I was talking, I didn't go heavily into it, but I talked about under exercise and over exercise. And actually over exercise is, especially if you're heavily depleted as a general person, and a lot of us are, it's such a stress on the body. And then like someone exercising 7 days a week, because it's the standard to go for. I don't know, there's some, it feels like you're achieving. I had someone and they were,
but the interesting
go.
thing about that was, I've had clients who are doing that and their body shape's not changing, and then they wonder why. And I sit there and go, because your body's stressed. It wants to hold on to the fat. It doesn't actually want to release it. Because I say to a lot of people, a lot of your weight, unless you manage your stress, will never dissipate. It will just hang around, hold on as a protective mechanism. Because most of us go into starvation mode, to actually a level of starvation to lose weight. Most of the times we don't do it healthily. And that
also the cortisol, right?
Yeah,
you talked about the
cortisol stress in the body.
What do they call it? Cortisol belly. And and the fats, and I think cortisol long term is toxic. It can create a toxicity. And so your fat stores are actually to reduce toxicity. It's actually your body trying to help the situation.
That's exactly right.
And we're like, we don't like what you're doing, body. It's a downward spiral. I think that's what you're pointing out as we talk, is how it all just downward spirals, and partially because we are so blinkered and hyper focused on one thing, and we don't see the bigger picture. And then the body's giving you all those clues. It's giving you smaller clues. We ignore it, and then it keeps ramping up, and we don't understand. We're like, we don't know, and your body is just like, this isn't working, dude.
And then at the end of all of that, they want a quick resolution. And as I say to some people, however long it's taking you to get there is possibly how long it's going to take to unwind that. So you've wound it up to a point where now you're doing something about it. You've got all these symptoms, as I said, poor digestion, poor sleep, feeling tired all the time, body feels restricted, rigid,
brain fog, headaches,
brain fog, pain, a whole collective expression of stress. And then teaching people that takes time to unwind is also something that they struggle with. They think like, oh, it only came on because they've only noticed the latest symptom, let's say. They've forgotten everything that leads up to it. It's like I say to clients, those whose backs go out when they put a dish in the dishwasher. That was the final straw. There was a whole stack of stuff that you've ignored prior to that actually led to that moment. It wasn't actually you putting a dish in the dishwasher that
wasn't the dish's fault.
No, it was not the dish's
and it's
fault.
not your body's fault either. Yeah, we kind of blame the body.
I think this is the thing, because as you said, societally, we're taught to push on, move through it, ignore it. You can't rest, you can't relax, you've just got to go, 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 go. And hence we were talking in our original chat back on Tuesday about the cycles of vitality, that a lot of people, you know, you can't be a go-go bunny all the time from that point of view. Our body does actually need rest to recover and reset and do all those kind of things. So, as I said, functionally, stress can show up in a lot of insidious little ways that we, as I said, tolerate.
That's one question, and you kind of started already answering it before I got a chance to ask you. But it's like, why is it? Why does it seem like when someone comes and they go, I want to be fixed in a couple of sessions, even though this, you know, took 20 years, possibly, you know, or like, you know, a series of accidents or things that happened, sedentary lifestyle, you know, so that your core isn't there, so then your back, you know, they're all connected, everything's connected.
It's connected,
why I don't know if you know the answer, because I guess it's a frustration for practitioners in general, but you know, what is it about, what is it that makes people sort of expect such a short, they want a quick fix, they think it's going to be quick, maybe they're not even aware of how long it took. What are your thoughts on it? Or you know,
I was about to say that I think the reality is that they think it's only just happened, that it's only just thrown up,
that's right,
and they've ignored all the little things along the way. So they think, you know, one session might do it, or two sessions might do it, or something like that. And reminding those people that yes, was not an overnight creation. I think the other thing, like if we want to look at it from probably what I was hinting on earlier, when tuning our bodies out. So I think there's an aspect where people don't want to be bothered by their bodies. Like I think we've seen them as inhibiting what we want to do if we're not feeling the most vital. So
maybe even expendable, like even though when your body dies, you die. Like maybe your soul doesn't die, but this lifetime's over.
I think there's an aspect of not honoring it. I think we as a society, like particularly in the Western world, I can't say from an Eastern perspective, but I think from a Western perspective, we've taught to punish it, tell it it's bad, it's not doing what we want it to do. So then we ignore it, or we end up in that punishment reward cycle. So and that's the whole weight loss cycle, isn't it? That we basically punish ourselves for being overweight, lose this weight, and then we reward ourselves going back to our normal eating pattern, you know, and that whole cycle, yo-yo cycle.
The yo-yos.
So I think there's an aspect of when our body's not performing like we want it to, we punish it. So get angry at it, frustrated at it, annoyed at it. And I think research has shown self-compassion gives us more results than ever negative reward systems, right? Which is an interesting one. Loving ourselves more, so to speak, you know, or caring for ourselves more will give us better results than saying I'm a bad person for eating that food, or I'm a bad person because I didn't go to bed early enough, or I'm a whatever story we're telling ourselves in our heads, so to speak.
Well, one of my thoughts was
body direction.
Exactly. I'm thinking, is it like the mind, or our limited mind, you know, not our expanded mind, our limited mind actually disconnecting and kind of punishing or criticizing the body's response to something that it probably started in the first place, like incorrect ideas about how we should be living, maybe our ignorance about, movement or the amount of exercise or what we should be eating. Is maybe it's a split, because you were talking about the mind-body connection, which is the truth, but it acts split and there's a whole discord.
And I think that's a way of protecting ourselves. We go into that protective mode, that if we give it too much attention, then it's going to get worse. So then we shut that down, and then it just wants to give us more attention, something to have more focus on. So then the headaches become, so instead of a headache being once every blue moon, it becomes a daily thing, because the body is screaming out at you and the mind is screaming at you. I want attention. I want to be acknowledged. I want to be respected. Try something different, like, if you know what I mean. And it could be a food intolerance that's creating the headache, but you've got to become aware of that to create a shift. So we can all acknowledge, without that original awareness, you can't change anything. So you can't make different choices. You can't, if you're willing to, as we said, stay blinkered and blame our body, as opposed to a response to we'll call it a stressful trigger, whether that's, as I said, food, poor sleep, lack of exercise, any of those kind of things, which are all stresses to the body, just not our typical form of stress that we imagine. Most of us think of the mental stress, but there's emotional
work stress, relationship stress,
all of that kind of stuff.
And so then what's some kind of naturally goes into, well, what are some natural ways to improve our stress response, to improve and that leading to improving vitality?
Well, I think we touched on it before, being mindful of the exercise we're doing. So people who are all in this high interval intensity workouts, so our HIIT workouts and stuff like that, not necessarily great, as you said, if you're already depleted. We need to actually be caring. So that's careful, that's slow walking, that's not even power walking, it's just enjoyment. It's almost mindful meditation, a walking meditation, where you're just going to enjoy. So that's leaving a phone at home, that's just spending time either with yourself, someone you want to chat with, or something like that, is one way. So as I said, being mindful of the exercise you do. So clearly, if you're feeling tired and all of those, I would encourage slower exercises. So I'm talking about things like yin yoga, your qigongs, your things like that. As I said, rest-based walking kind of thing, just easy, doesn't necessarily get the heart rate going or anything like that. It's enjoyable. Some might even call it worthless, but from an energetic point of view, it's a way of actually bringing our cortisol levels back down. Other ways, meditation clearly is another one. So calming that mind response. And I'm sure we're going to get people saying, I can't sit still and I can't do this and I can't do that. That's clearly a sign that you need to do it more, right?
And obviously meditation leads to mindfulness, which is going to aid in all that, in making the good decisions anyway. Or like an alternative meditation, if you can't sit still, that creates the same effect. And
I say for those people who struggle to concentrate during that, I always recommend a guided meditations where you're actually focusing on someone else, because even in that way, you're taking your brain out of that. It's got something else to focus on that is not your stresses. So it's not your workplace stresses, it's not your home stresses, it's not your, all of those kind of things. So guided meditations can be perfect from that scenario. So we've talked about rest-based training. We've talked about, as I said, things that are easy, restful, from that scenario. Now, from a food perspective, as I was discussing before, we need to be mindful of the response our food gives us. So again, that means tuning into the body, not out of the body. So for some people, if they're finding their digestion isn't great, clearly a symptom diary would be good in working with someone who is, got a nutrition background. So to help them check in with that. But for some people, that can be their first port of call in terms of kind of seeing some correlation between, oh, if I have that at night, then I feel crappy in the morning, or if I have that at morning tea, then I feel crappy at lunchtime. So the symptoms I typically encourage people to look for, particularly 2 hours after eating, are things like bloating, gas, tiredness, lethargy, all of that kind of stuff. That's a clear sign that the meal beforehand has not had a huge amount of vitality force for them to feel good and vibrant and all of those kind of things.
It might be as simple as you need more nutritional food, like that's the simplest,
Absolutely.
but then it could be like a carb protein ratio, and the nutritionist can find all that kind of balance, and they've got general standards for people, and something that the general public just can't really do themselves, not really, unless it's just one thing that you're having a response to.
And from a movement perspective, again, things like stretching is, so that's where the yin yoga kind of comes in if you needed someone to guide you through those kind of things. But again, when I teach my clients about stretching, is that we don't actually want to overstretch, because then the body wants to tighten. So
I didn't say that in my one. I was talking about stretching. I didn't talk. That's a good point. Overstretching. It's a problem.
So with that, we want, because again, it's a protective mechanism. So if we think of like an elastic band that gets overstretched, what it does when we release it is it recoils. So it goes, so the same thing with your body. If you feel like, so I encourage my clients to go to that first point of discomfort of the stretch, hold that for somewhere between 15 and 30 seconds. You should actually feel a relaxation response. You should actually feel the muscle relax. A lot, and I say to people, if you're not, then you're overstretching. So you might not think, that's just a guideline, generally speaking. But there's no need to reef it, right? From that aspect. If all you can do is get to here, then be happy with there. So
it's like everyone's trying to achieve. And it's like you don't need to achieve on your stretching. Like the whole point is the opposite. So it's a good point. Like I think that's been speckled through our conversation, and what you've been trying to bring that insight for everybody listening is like, like this mind level of ideas you need awareness and mindfulness of, and that will change how you behave in a lot of the health-based strategies.
So and then people get shifts out of that. They start going, okay, and as we said, it can sometimes be those little things that can make a big difference. So as we said, even with the digestion and food stuff, it might be one food product that's creating a lot of problems. And if you shift that around, either what time of day you eat it or choosing not to eat it or whatever, we can use dairy for an example here. If you choose to take dairy out and bring, say, a plant-based food alternative in, which there are a plethora these days, that might be enough to shift a pain response. It may be enough to shift a sinus issue. It may be enough to, a whole range of issues could be alleviated by one food choice in that scenario. And then clearly kindness, self-compassion, kindness, all of those kind of things I think is really important in the stress. We want to move out of the reward punishment phase. We want to move into a more even-keeled space when it comes to responding. So from a stress, because clearly we're responding when we create a stress response. So either our body's responding to something we've done to it, put in it, or our mind is responding from an external, as we said, either relationship, emotional, work, anything like that. So if we can be kinder to ourselves in that process, I think that can be a big pivot point for some people as well. So instead of saying I'm a bad person, or that's, too hard, you can ask yourself, what can I do today? What change can I make today without it making it feel like it's a forever thing, or a withdrawal thing, or feeling the need that at some point in their time they're going to have to rebel against what they're implementing and all those kind of things. What kind thing can I do to myself today? How can I be kind to myself today? What kind choice can I make for myself today? So
a nice balance between the mindfulness too, like you've got the mindfulness aspect, and what's actually creating stress, what am I doing that's not helping the situation, and then balancing that nicely with compassion, kindness, not expecting it tomorrow, not expecting that, like even the original mental stress that maybe I need to have achieved this by this age or whatever, and going, well, you know, actually, I guess that's both kindness and mindfulness. Actually, that's not important, and it was never mine. It might have been a parent or a
That's
society
exactly
thing.
right. Yeah.
It was never mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's lovely balance. Is there one tip or final, you know, maybe just the conclusion of what we said to sort of wrap this up for people?
Well, I think the simplest thing is recognizing that there is a mind-body connection. And as I said, that's typically bi-directional. So that's the mind sending messages to the body and the body sending messages back to the brain. So if we can work with that in a more holistic viewpoint, so not excluding the mind and not excluding the body, but bringing them back together, learning to listen to our bodies would be, and as I said, being kinder to ourselves when a symptom shows up or something that we don't like about our bodies doing something, you know, as I said, shift that from a, you know, harsh reality to a more kinder viewpoint. And so, yeah, so that can mean less exercise, not more exercise. For some people, that's a different food choice. But it could just be learning to go, okay, this is where's my body at now? Possibly, as you said, some stuff to unwind out of that. And then mentally, the meditation, tuning into things that create, as we said, mindfulness was where I was going, but also a restful mind. So one that's not always overly stimulated and on the go and, you know, rush and all of that kind of stuff. How can we slow down the pace of our lives so that our stress response doesn't need to become a chronic state, and it becomes that acute response which flows. So something shows up, we respond, and then it comes down. Something shows up, and then we respond, as opposed to being up here all the time.
Yeah. Okay. And that's a great segue into, you know, you've got an offer, you've got your own special session that you are offering for us today. Let's hear about that.
Okay. So the introductory package for Cervelo Calm, which is a modality that I created myself with the help of Leah, is a combination of talk therapy and energy healing. So we dive deep into your triggers, typically emotional ones, work out where some of those core woundings are coming from, and then I do an energy healing on you, calming your emotional central nervous system. So calming down the emotional reaction to that trigger. So that is run as they're 2 1-hour sessions, which are then further split into roughly half hour. So 30-minute talk session, a 30-minute energy healing. I then follow up in about roughly 7 days to check in how you're going. And then we have a follow-up session, which may be on the same problem and maybe on a different one, because we've calmed that one down enough that it's no longer showing up as something that needs to be worked on. And then, and that's $250. Normally a single Cervelo Calm session is $150. However, I require you to do the introductory sessions first so that you get a feel for it, understanding of it, and all of those kind of good things.
Yeah, and then the you know, when you calm the nervous system, that's when healing can start. You know, that rest and digest, and that's when the building back and the renewing and all that happens. So until, if your nervous system's up, if your guard's up energetically, then that healing just, it's not conducive to the healing process. So that's all put in there. And then Sarah's offering also like mental working through where that might be contributing as well. So the link, did you want to say anything else about that?
I was just going to say that it reduces your resistance. So it makes it, as you said, easier for that healing to come through. You're not fighting what's showing up in going through these processes. We calm that response down so that what does show up can be processed, worked through, and as you said, the healing journey begins.
And then also intuition comes through, insights, wisdom, and then you're making better choices. So I'll put the link in the post. It'll be in the comments below. You can also search Sarah Yeoman wellness. You search all three of those and you won't get an artist. You'll get her webpage on Google, so that you can also check out our other services. What else she's got? She's got some blogs as well, I think, on your site.
Yes, I do.
The last time I checked. Yes, awesome. So yeah, check that out. Thanks so much, Sarah. That was really, really informative, really, really good. It was educational, actually, about how we get really hyper focused, and it might be a trauma nervous system stress response, where when something is feeling in danger, we hyper focus, and yet the answer is more holistically. And when you open up and understand, you know, the journey that got you to here, then you can understand the healing that comes. So thanks, that was great. We have no more interviews. This is the last of the interviews, actually, for Spring to Health. But yeah, I had mine yesterday on cultivating physical vitality. There was vitality with voice, as Cecilia. Before that, there was also intuitive vitality and a spiritual healing for emotion vitality. So check all those ones out. We've got the final group panel discussion, which have been great. Those vitality discussions have been really, really deep. They're getting deeper. So we've got the last one and culminating the whole event. So that's really good. If you have any questions for Sarah, please put them in the comments. She'll circle back, answer them. Maybe you want to have a discussion or ask about her Cervello Calm session, which is really beautiful energy, really good responses for people, because she's been working through and testing and tracking the responses from people. And so people have been getting like that calmness of the nervous system, which is just not enough in society now. So we need more of that. Yeah, and so yeah, we'll see you all tomorrow for the last thing. Looking forward to more flourishing vitality. Thank you, Sarah, and see you, everybody. Bye.